Welcome to the session on preparation of dovetail joints and checking dovetail angles using an angle gauge. The name of the dovetail joint comes from the shape of the tail of the dovebird and is used to connect two pieces together for a tighter fit. Dovetail joints are mainly used where there is a single axis movement and is very sturdy, allows precise motion, low friction, and high rigidity. Often, they are used when the two pieces must slide relative to one another along only one axis. Unlike other joints, in a dovetail joint, measurements of components involve internal and external angles and hence cannot be calculated directly. An understanding of how to calculate the angular measurements is essential to construct a good dovetail. Objectives. Let's now look at the key objectives. At the end of this session, you will be able to summarize the use of balls or rollers to calculate angular measurements of a dovetail, mark an angle gauge of the required dimension, prepare a dovetail and assemble to H8 by H8 fit, check the angles with an angle gauge, use balls or rollers. Let's first review the use of balls or rollers in angular measurements. The angular dimensions, both internal and external, of a dovetail cannot be taken directly using standard instruments like vernier caliper and micrometer due to its speciality of shape. Balls or rollers are used in such cases. The size and taper can be accurately calculated from the measurement taken from balls or rollers placed between standard measuring instruments and the component. This technique can be applied to determine the internal angle of a dovetail, determine the external angle of a dovetail, determine the depth and angle of the groove. The ball's only point of contact is with the surface to be tested, whereas the roller has line contact with the instrument and the dovetail surface. So rollers are more practical when measuring dovetails. They can be used for making precise measurements. In this session, we will first prepare an angle gauge and then use it to calculate angular measurements in the preparation of the dovetail. Tools and supplies. Let's first list the tools and supplies required. We will need mild steel pieces for dovetail and angle gauge, bench vise, surface plate, angle plate, vernier height gauge, vernier bevel protractor, vernier caliper, micrometer, dot punch, center punch, ball peen hammer, bench drill, C-clamp, chisel, anvil, drill bit, tri-square, files, and hacksaw. Now let's see the dimensions of the gauge that we are going to prepare. The gauge has a length of 35 mm and width of 22 mm. The sidewise angle is 60 degrees. The cross-section wise angle is 30 degrees. It has a thickness of 0.5 mm at the front and 3 mm thickness at the back end. We will now take a look at the steps involved in preparing an angle gauge. Select and check the material for its proper size, 36 by 25 by 3 mm. Fix the workpiece into a vise, keeping one of the faces up. File the face and mark all of its dimensions using a vernier height gauge, angle plate, and surface plate. Mark the angles using a vernier bevel protractor. Saw and file the gauge to the required dimension to complete the work. File to an accuracy of plus or minus 0.02 millimeters and check its angles, both 30° and 60°, with a bevel protractor. Angular surface must be finished with an accuracy of plus or minus 10 degrees. Now we have successfully completed the preparation of the gauge. We now proceed to the preparation of the dovetail. First, let's see the dimensions of the dovetail. The side view of the dovetail has two parts, A, male part, and B, female part, which both have an angle of 60 degrees and a relief hole of 4 by dia 3. Let's take a look at the steps involved in marking and preparing a male and female dovetail. Check the given material for its size. File and finish the given material to 78 by 74 by 6 millimeters. Mark off part A and part B with a vernier height gauge, surface plate, and angle plate. Drill relief holes 3 mm in both the parts A and B and also chain drill part B. Cut both A and B with a hacksaw. File and finish the blanks for both parts as per dimensions. Hacksaw one side of the dovetail of part A. Hacksaw the other side of the dovetail part A. Get the angle gauge checked for correctness before using it as a gauge. Then file and finish and check with the angle gauge. Hacksaw dovetail of part B. Cut off along the chain drilling and remove the excess metal from the internal dovetail of part B. File the internal dovetail of part B. Check the angles with the angle gauge. All burrs must be removed before mating. File and fit part B with part A. Make sure the component easily slides in with light pressure. The components should also fit and slide when the sides are reversed. Now we have successfully completed the marking and preparation of the male and female dovetail. With that, we have come to the end of this session. In this session, we learned to prepare an angle gauge of the required dimension, prepare a dovetail and assemble it to H8 by H8 fit. Check the angles with an angle gauge.